The bustling international airport hummed with the constant flow of travelers rushing through terminals lined with duty-free shops, displaying luxury perfumes and electronics under bright fluorescent lights that cast harsh shadows on the tiled floors worn from countless footsteps of hurried passengers dragging suitcases behind them or carrying backpacks, stuffed with essentials for long journeys across time zones, and among them were the identical twin sisters Maya and Leah Thompson, both 16 years old, with matching curly afros tied back neatly in colorful scrunchies that added a touch of personality to their otherwise practical travel outfits, consisting of comfortable leggings paired with oversized sweaters, ideal for the chill of air-conditioned cabins, and the unpredictability of weather at destinations far from home, their excitement palpable as they approached the check-in counter for Skyline Airways, clutching first-class tickets gifted by their father for a youth leadership conference in Seattle, where they planned to network with mentors from various nonprofits and attend workshops on community organizing and public speaking skills that could shape their futures as aspiring activists inspired by family tales of overcoming adversity. The sisters, from a modest suburban neighborhood, where tree-lined streets hid the struggles of working-class families, relying on public transport and thrift store finds, had earned their spots through essays on social equity, drawing from personal experiences of navigating predominantly white schools, where their voices were often overshadowed by peers from more affluent backgrounds who dominated discussions without realizing their privilege, but today marked a milestone of independence as their protective father had reluctantly agreed to let them travel solo after numerous discussions about safety protocols and emergency contacts, trusting their maturity while reminding them via text messages sent that morning to stay vigilant in unfamiliar settings, full of strangers who might not see them as the bright young women they were. But through lenses tinted by societal biases, the line snaked forward with passengers of various backgrounds, some chatting animatedly about tropical vacations to beaches with white sand and turquoise waters, others buried in phones, scrolling emails from bosses, demanding updates even on off days. But when the twins reached the front, the agent, a middle-aged white man with a badge reading Bradley Kent, glanced up briefly from his computer screen, before calling out next to the white family standing behind them, as if the setter girls were invisible obstacles. Rather than paying customers with valid reservations, a young couple in matching vacation shirts stepped around them without a second thought, handing over passports while Bradley engaged in friendly banter about their honeymoon destination, asking about preferred islands in the Caribbean with a warm smile that lit up his face and revealed straight teeth, likely from expensive dental work, never extending that courtesy to Maya and Leah, who stood confused, exchanging glances, wondering if they had somehow blended into the background, like chameleons adapting to their surroundings unintentionally. Leah cleared her throat politely, her voice soft but firm. "Excuse me, sir, we were in line first and have been waiting patiently." But Bradley continued typing without acknowledgement, processing the couple's luggage tags with efficiency that bordered on performative as he joked about packing light for island hopping, leaving the sisters to shift uncomfortably from foot to foot, as whispers from those behind grew impatient with the unexplained delay. Finally, after the couple departed with boarding passes in hand and well wishes for a romantic getaway, 3 more white passengers, including a businessman in a suit and a mother with 2 children, were helped before Bradley reluctantly motioned the twins forward, his expression sour, as if their presence inconvenienced his routine tickets and ID. Now he snapped, not making eye contact, his fingers drumming on the keyboard in rhythm that suggested boredom or perhaps disdain. For the task at hand, Maya placed the boarding passes printed at home on crisp paper and their school IDs on the counter. But Bradley's eyebrows shot up skeptically as he examined the documents. "First class, really? Where'd you get these, from some online Deal. Or what? Implying doubt that echoed through his narrowed eyes, scanning the barcodes, repeatedly holding them to the light, checking for forgeries or watermarks, while nearby agents processed others swiftly without such intense scrutiny, chatting casually about weather patterns affecting flights. Our father booked them for us directly through the app. Leah explained calmly, trying to diffuse the tension with a smile that went unreturned. We're heading to a conference in Seattle. Is there an issue with the reservation? But Bradley's response was a mumbled system glitch maybe, or something off. Wait here while I check. As he vanished into a back office behind a door marked staff, only leaving the sisters standing awkwardly for over 20 minutes, while the line behind grew restless with sighs, and foot-tapping from impatient travelers glancing at watches and muttering about missing connections. Upon returning, he slapped down new passes on the counter with a thud, reassigned to Economy Gate 18. No first class available now, due to overbooking. Move along. Before you hold up everyone else, his explanation vague about the sudden change, despite the tickets being confirmed online that morning with email receipts saved on their phones. The twins protested mildly, their voices rising slightly in frustration, but still controlled. But these were paid for specifically and confirmed. Can we speak to a supervisor to verify the error? Only for Bradley to wave dismissively. Supervisors busy with actual problems, take it or leave it. But don't block the line, forcing them to step aside. Humiliated as stares from other passengers burned, like spotlights judging their insistence as entitlement rather than rightful claim to what was purchased fairly, shaken but determined to not let it ruin their trip. They proceeded to security, where lines funneled through scanners beeping intermittently under watchful eyes of uniformed officers standing with arms crossed, monitoring for any signs of during just irregularity. At the checkpoint, an agent named Carla Voss, a white woman in her 42nd with a stern expression and hair pulled back tightly, directed them to a separate lane for random enhanced screening, her voice flat as she announced it, loudly drawing attention from surrounding travelers who glanced curiously or averted eyes uncomfortably, pretending not to notice the disparity. Is this necessary? We have a tight connection after the delay at check-in, Maya asked politely, hoping for reason, but Carla's reply was sharp and unyielding questioning. Protocol can lead to further delays or denial of travel hands. Out for pat-down now and empty all pockets. Proceeding with invasive touches that lingered unnecessarily on their hair, twisting curls roughly, and clothing patting down areas with pressure that felt punitive rather than protective, while Twool, rummaging through bags with rough hands, scattering personal items like notebooks filled with conference prep notes on topics such as youth activism and snacks packed from home like granola bars wrapped in foil onto the conveyor belt, where pills from Leah's vitamin bottle spilled, requiring explanation as if suspicious contraband hidden in plain sight. The process dragged for 30 minutes, while others breezed through with minimal checks and friendly nods from agents, Carla commenting audibly, "These hairstyles always need extra attention. You never know what's hidden in there could be." Anything from combs to contraband, chuckling to a colleague who nodded in agreement, perpetuating the ordeal as a spectacle that left the sisters feeling exposed and dehumanized, their privacy invaded in front of strangers who whispered among themselves, "Must be something wrong to take so long," or "Kids these days always causing trouble." A fellow passenger, an older Asian man in business attire, attempted to intervene from the adjacent line. "This seems excessive and unfair. They're just kids trying to travel," but was warned sternly by another agent, "Mind your own business, sir, or you'll join them for screening." Keep moving, silencing any potential support and isolating the twins further in their discomfort, finally cleared but delayed beyond recovery. For any buffer time, the sisters gathered their scattered belongings with trembling hands, repacking bags hastily, while fighting back tears of frustration, the emotional toll mounting as they hurried toward Gate 18, only to find it changed again via overhead announcements, blaring through speakers. Attention! Passengers for Flight 4, 5, 6 to Seattle, now departing from Gate 42, adding to the confusion that felt deliberate. In its pattern of obstruction designed to wear them down before even boarding, the airport's vast halls echoing with flight calls and rolling suitcases, a backdrop to their growing frustration and sense of isolation. Yet they pressed on, unaware that these barriers were merely the opening act in a drama that would unravel far beyond personal inconvenience into a reckoning for those perpetuating such treatment daily, without consequence. With the security ordeal behind them, but its sting lingering like an open wound on their dignity that refused to heal quickly in the sterile environment of the terminal, where announcements blared overhead about delayed flights and lost luggage claims echoing through the vast space filled with the chatter of weary travelers slumped in uncomfortable chairs or pacing with phones pressed to ears. Maya and Leah made their way through the crowded corridors, lined with fast food outlets, emitting aromas of greasy fries and fresh coffee that normally would tempt with promises of comfort food to soothe travel nerves, but now turned their stomachs with nausea from the accumulated stress of being singled out and scrutinized for no reason, other than their appearance in a world that claimed equality yet practiced division in subtle and overt ways, deciding to grab a quick bite at Terminal Bites, a casual eatery advertising burgers and salads with colorful signs promising quick service for travelers on the go, complete with images of juicy patties and crisp greens that looked appealing. On the menu boards outside the entrance beckoning hungry passers-by, the sisters approached the hostess stand, where a young white woman named Sarah Wilkins smiled initially, with a practiced customer service grin that lit up her face under the bright lights. But it faded upon seeing them, her eyes flicking too, their casual attire of leggings and sweaters that were comfortable yet unassuming before announcing flatly table for two wait time is 30 minutes due to high demand, despite visible empty booths scattered throughout the dimly lit space, with vinyl seats, cracked from years of use, and Formica tables wiped clean waiting for occupants, some still bearing water rings from previous customers who had come and gone without issue, but there are open spots right there, including that corner booth by the window. Leah pointed out, gesturing to a nearby four-top clean and ready with menus already placed anticipating diners. Sarah's response clipped and evasive. Those are for larger parties or reservations. We don't take walk-ins during peak hours as per policy to manage flow, contradicting the no reservation policy displayed prominently on the menu board behind her next to specials, like double cheeseburgers with fries for a discounted price, aimed at budget-conscious flyers, as a group of white college students in hoodies and jeans, similar to theirs, arrived behind them chatting loudly about their spring break plans. Sarah immediately seated them at one of the supposedly reserved tables with enthusiastic "This way, folks, enjoy your meal, and let me know if you need anything extra," like drink refills on the house, her warmth contrasting sharply with the cold reception given to the sisters who stood in disbelief, their hearts sinking further into the pit of frustration that had been digging deeper since check-in. Maya feeling a surge of anger bubbling like soda shaken too hard, but channeling it into calm inquiry to avoid escalation. "We've been traveling all day and just need a quick meal. Why the difference in treatment when we're clearly..." Next, only for Sarah to retort defensively, "If you're unhappy with the wait, find somewhere else. No one's forcing you to eat here, and complaining won't change policy," her tone laced with condescension that drew snickers from a nearby waiter leaning against the counter. Scrolling his phone during a slow moment, the manager, a burly man named Ron Haskell, emerged from the kitchen, wiping hands on an apron stained with ketchup spots and grease smears, intervening with a booming problem. "Ladies over here!" But his intervention favored Sarah as he claimed, high demand and strict policy enforcement, while ignoring the obvious disparity in how groups were treated based on visible cues like skin color and perceived status. Leah's quick wit surfaced. Despite the exhaustion, your policy seems selective based on appearance, not availability. That's discriminatory and against federal guidelines for public accommodations, prompting Ron to threaten gruffly, "Cause a scene. And I'll call security. This is a family place, not a protest zone. Keep it moving if you're not waiting quietly," escalating the situation until a Latina server named Maria Gonzalez whispered from the side as she passed, "With a tray of drinks, I'll seat you. At my section, quietly follow me around the corner away from their view," risking her job to lead them to a booth, hidden by a partition where she served them promptly with extra sides like onion rings and sodas, as an apology explaining in hushed tones over the clatter of dishes from the kitchen. "It happens too often here, especially to folks like you with melanin, that stands out. I document it when I can for complaints to corporate, but nothing changes without proof. So record, if possible providing." Her contact number scribbled on a napkin for future support in case they filed a report. The meal rushed and tense with glances from other staff, who hovered suspiciously as if expecting trouble. But Maria's kindness, a brief oasis in the desert of hostility, restoring some faith in humanity amid the ordeal that had turned their exciting trip into a gauntlet of microaggressions chipping away at their spirits bite by bite, finishing quickly with half-eaten burgers wrapped. For later they headed to Gate 18, only to find boarding underway with lines forming orderly under the watchful eye of attendants. But upon presenting passes, the agent, a white man, named Derek Holman, scrutinized them intensely under the harsh gate lighting ID. "Please?" And explain the reassignment note on your record that popped up in the system demanding additional proof like birth certificates they didn't carry. On a short domestic flight, while waving through others with minimal checks and friendly, have a great flight wishes that flowed freely to families and business travelers alike. This is standard for flagged tickets due to earlier discrepancies, he claimed, but the flag originated from Bradley's earlier actions at check-in, creating a chain of suspicion that delayed them further as he called a supervisor over the radio who arrived with 2 security guards for verification, subjecting them to questions about their itinerary, father's occupation, and even the conference details that felt invasive and profiling, as if probing for inconsistencies to justify denial. "We're minors heading to a leadership event. Why the interrogation when others aren't even asked for basic confirmation?" Leah asked, her voice rising slightly in exasperation. But Derek's reply protocol for certain profiles prevent fraud or disruptions based on alerts hinted at racial undertones without explicit admission, leaving the sisters to stand aside. As boarding continued without them, the clock ticking down to departure, the supervisor, a white woman named Lisa Grant, intervening minimally with crossed arms to pay any fees for discrepancies or step aside. "We can't hold the plane for unresolved issues without addressing the root cause of the flag that seemed propagated through the system like a virus targeting them specifically." The sisters pooling pocket money scraped from allowances to cover unexpected fees for administrative adjustments. But the emotional drain mounting as boarding completed, with stares from seated passengers peeking through the jet bridge window whispering about the holdup at the gate that delayed their takeoff, finally aboard in economy. Seats far from their booked luxury crammed between snoring strangers and crying infants. The flight attendant, a black woman named Tanya Brooks, noticed their distress during the safety demo, offering bottled water and a sympathetic ear. "I've seen this before with folks who look like us. Hang in there and document if you can for complaints later." But the damage done with Leah placing a hand on Maya's knee whispering, "We can't let this slide anymore. It's systemic, and Dad needs to know even if it interrupts his day." As the plane taxied down the runway, the sisters agreeing in hushed tones that the pattern of treatment warranted escalation beyond personal endurance, Maya pulling out her phone despite the no electronics rule before takeoff, dialing their father's number, with fingers trembling from the culmination of humiliations that boiled over into the decision to involve him, fully expecting his reaction to match their outrage, but unaware of the storm it would unleash on the airline that had failed them so profoundly at every turn. The tension peaked as Jamal rose once more in the courtroom, where the air hung heavy with anticipation, like a storm about to break after hours of buildup, with Vance pacing slightly, his polished shoes clicking on the floor as he wrapped up his final arguments, reiterating the need for order in schools to prevent anarchy from one student's misguided stand. But Jamal's voice cut through the rhetoric, steady amid the charged atmosphere that crackled with unspoken doubts from the spectators who had shifted from indifference to intrigue during the proceedings. His words flowing with a precision honed from those solitary nights, poring over legal texts under dim lights at home, citing key precedents like Tinker v. Des Moines, where student expression was protected as long as it didn't materially disrupt operations. Arguing his sit-in mirrored that protected speech against discriminatory suspensions that targeted peers of color disproportionately without due process, as evidenced by school records showing higher rates for Black and Latino students in minor infractions like talking back or dress code violations. Whitaker's initial skepticism cracking visibly as she queried his sources, with a furrowed brow, leaning forward for the first time, genuinely engaged rather than dismissive, her pen pausing mid-note as if the boy's knowledge forced her to reconsider the rote application of rules she had enforced for decades, Jamal responding with precise quotes from rulings on silent protests that affirmed rights to dissent in educational settings without violence or interference, drawing analogies to his case, where no classes were halted, no property damaged, and no harm occurred beyond challenging the status quo of administrative overreach that silenced student voices before they could articulate grievances. Dalton objecting vehemently, his face reddening as he slammed a fist lightly on the table, claiming the boy was grandstanding without credentials or formal training, but faltering under the boy's factual barrage that referenced specific clauses from the Bill of Rights applied to minors in public institutions, like the right to petition for redress without fear of retaliation. The judge's realization dawning through widened eyes as she recognized flaws in the prosecution's framing that overlooked constitutional safeguards in favor of administrative convenience, prompting her to interrupt with questions about the school's evidence, which Vance stammered through, unable to refute Jamal's points on selective enforcement where white students faced lesser consequences for similar behaviors, documented in anonymous reports from teachers who feared reprisal for speaking out, the room erupting in murmurs from the back benches, where community members nodded in agreement, some wiping tears as they saw a young black boy command respect through intellect alone, and reporters typed furiously on laptops or tablets, capturing the upset in real time with live tweets, hinting at a potential viral moment that could shift public perception on youth rights in education. Whitaker adjourning briefly to her chambers, returning with a composed yet transformed demeanor, her posture less rigid, as if the weight of her robe felt heavier under the scrutiny of her own conscience, announcing the case's dismissal, with a sealed record to protect the minor's future, and admonishing the school for overreach in handling student grievances that bordered on suppression rather than fair investigation, recommending an independent review of disciplinary policies to ensure equity, the gavel falling not as a definitive end, but a turning point that opened floodgates as Jamal exited to a crowd of supporters gathered outside the courthouse steps, under overcast skies, chanting softly for justice, with signs waving in the Probit breeze, some bearing images of Aisha from her advocacy days, holding placards at rallies for women's rights. Others, quoting Jamal's speech that had spread via whispered recordings from attendees' phones uploaded to social media platforms where clips garnered thousands of views within hours, the viral storm erupting as the twins recorded interactions shared anonymously online, but quickly attributed to Jamal, amassing millions of views as it detailed the upset with vivid accounts of Whitaker's humble demeanor during the exchange and Jamal's eloquent dismantling of the charges, sparking investigations into school biases that revealed patterns of disproportionate punishments for minority students, leading to audits by state education boards and calls for reform from advocacy groups nationwide, including national organizations like the ACLU, who amplified the case through press releases and amicus briefs for related lawsuits. Dalton facing backlash with his office launching an internal inquiry of his handling of juvenile cases, several showing signs of aggressive charging against underrepresented youth, resulting in his demotion to lesser roles away from courtroom duties and mandatory sensitivity training that he attended, begrudgingly grumbling about political correctness, but slowly absorbing the material through role-playing exercises that mirrored his own behaviors. Whitaker, inspired by the encounter and her subsequent self-reflection, volunteered for youth legal clinics in community centers, teaching constitutional rights to underserved teens from similar backgrounds as Jamal. Her transformation public in interviews with local news outlets, where she credited the boy for reigniting her passion for equitable justice, admitting past oversights in prioritizing efficiency over empathy, which resonated with legal circles, prompting discussions on bias training for judges at annual conferences, where she spoke candidly about the need for lifelong learning in the bench to avoid complacency. Jamal founding a peer mentorship program at his school, where students learned advocacy skills through workshops on rights awareness and conflict resolution, partnering with local organizations like civil liberties unions to host sessions on navigating systems of power, drawing participants from neighboring districts eager to emulate his stand against injustice, with role-playing scenarios based on real events like dress code enforcements or grading disparities. His uncle, re-emerging from years of distance after the case, made headlines, responding to a family outreach initiated by Jamal's grandmother to reconnect, sharing stories of Aisha's early days as an organizer in women's shelters that inspired new generations, including Jamal's cousins, who stepped up as co-facilitators in the program, teaching younger kids about self-advocacy through games and discussions. Victor's counterpart in education reform, a prominent superintendent named Dr. Elena Vasquez, endorsing funding for similar initiatives through grants from state departments that equipped programs with resources like legal aid hotlines for students and digital platforms for anonymous reporting of injustices to school boards. The mural, metaphorically evolving into a digital archive of activist stories shared globally via an app developed by Jamal, with help from tech-savvy friends, featuring user-submitted narratives of personal triumphs over adversity. Accessible to schools worldwide as teaching tools for history classes or civics lessons, Jamal's life shifting dramatically as scholarships poured in from universities focused on social justice programs, offering full rides for law studies with specialized tracks in civil rights. But he focused on grassroots impact, deferring enrollment for a year to build the program further. Speaking at forums on youth empowerment, without seeking fame or accolades, content with the quiet satisfaction of seeing peers empowered to voice concerns without fear of reprisal, like a shy classmate who challenged a teacher's unfair comment after attending a session. The ripple effects touching lives, like a young girl inspired to challenge her own school's dress code policies that discriminated against natural hair, leading to revisions after her petition gained traction with support from state. Jamal's network, or a veteran teacher re-evaluating grading practices to ensure fairness after attending one of Jamal's workshops and reflecting on implicit biases through provided materials, culminating in a reunion event months later at the school auditorium where Whitaker and Jamal co-presented on the power of dialogue in bridging generational and systemic divides, forging unlikely alliances that included former skeptics, like Vance, who attended anonymously, perhaps seeking redemption in the shadows of the crowd, listening intently to the discussions on restorative justice. The story closing on Jamal's quiet reflection by a community mural honoring Aisha unveiled at the school, with fresh paint depicting her alongside modern figures like Jamal, symbolizing continuity in the fight for equity. A gathering where community leaders toasted to progress with speeches on collective action, a testament to how one voice amplified through courage and knowledge could echo eternally through changed hearts, reformed systems, and a society inching closer to the ideals it professed, but often failed to uphold in practice with ongoing efforts like annual reviews of school policies ensuring the lessons from Jamal's case endured beyond the headlines. The courthouse steps now, a symbol not of intimidation, but of possibility, where future advocates might stand, drawing strength from this tale of transformation that began with a boy's refusal to be silenced and ended with waves of change rippling outward beyond the confines of any single hearing or verdict into broader societal shifts toward inclusivity and fairness for all.